I would never wish a near death experience on anyone. But having said that, if you're unfortunate enough to have one, and I've had several, it's one of the greatest blessings that you could possibly have because it forces you to realize what's important and what isn't. It forces you to see what matters and what doesn't. And every episode that I've ever had has forced me to see that a lot of things that I was worried about, a lot of things I was concerned about, don't matter at all. None of it matters. What really mattered to me were the times that I should have said things to people that I never got an opportunity to say, the dreams that I should have done. And what that does is it removes a lot of barriers out of your head. And what that does is it removes a lot of barriers of just not really caring what people think. The less you care about what other people think, the less that you care about their opinions, the more free you are, the more mobile, the more nimble that you can move. It's not caring about what other people think, not caring about what other people say. Now, is it possible to be totally uncaring? No, because there are people in my life that I do very much care what their opinion is, but that group gets smaller and smaller by the day. It's really terrifying to see how much of our lives have been shaped, including my own, by the opinions of other people. There were things that my father wanted me to do many years ago, and I refused. I didn't want to do it. And he and we didn't speak for years. I decided to go my own way. Was it painful? It was absolutely painful. I had to do a lot of wrestling internally to tell him no. It wasn't just a quick no like it would be now. It was something that I had to fight in my head. And what I learned from that in preparing to have these tough conversations with people is that it's never, or at least it's never been in my case, it's never as bad as my mind is telling me that it's going to be. I had tough conversations with my kids, my father, my wife, with people who have worked for me in the past. It's you're always rehearsing these conversations in your head, and your brain is always telling you, well, they're going to say this, they're going to say that. And what I will say about that, if there's tension between you and whoever it is that you're going to have that tough conversation with, they know that they know that that tension is there. You don't have to tell them. Nothing that you're going to say to them is really going to surprise them. And more times than not, because most people don't like change, most people don't like conflict. And whenever I have initiated these tough conversations with people, the other party almost had this sense of relief because they knew that there was tension and they were just thankful and glad and happy that I brought it up. Because people don't like change. Most people don't like confrontation. If you really enjoy confrontation, that's not me. Most people want to be led into that. Very few people are going to initiate it. And when you take the role of the initiator and having that tough conversation, then you're probably going to get a much better outcome than you had originally planned or originally hoped for because you initiated it. They're relieved. They're happy. The conversation is generally with them going to go far better than your mind ever told you that it would. So the best way to have the tough conversation is just to have it. And with that said, I have people that reach out to me every day and they're stuck in these bad marriages and they don't leave because they're worried about what other people are going to think. And before I started talking about this, I would have thought that never would have really been an issue, but it's an enormous issue of what other people are going to think. Along along with all the labels that have been burned and tattooed into their heads of you're not good enough, no one else is going to love you, just all this gaslighting bullshit that they're listening to. And what I tell people about that is very simple. If you're going to be influenced by the opinions of others, if you're going to be influenced by what they're if you're going to be influenced by what they think, and you can't control what people think. You have no idea what's going on in someone's mind. If somebody tells you that they can figure out what somebody's thinking, they're full of shit because they can't do it. The fact of the matter, but if you're going to follow what they think or what their advice is, there's a few things that you should follow. Number one, are they at or above the level where you want to be? If they're not, then I wouldn't listen to them. Do they pay your bills? Do they influence your health? Are they influencing directly your happiness and your welfare? Most of them aren't. Are you thinking about these people when you get up in the morning? Because I guarantee you, none of them are thinking about you. So there's no reason to put much validation on what other people say. Unfortunately, nowadays, most people put that validation in what they put on social media, which to me is just stupid. And there's no wonder why so many people are depressed and unhappy, because they've adopted social media as their real world, as their sounding board, as their echo chamber. And the problem with that is you're typically just going to be in the echo chamber of people that agree with you. You're not going to hear many opposing opinions. The algorithm is going to make sure that you don't. And what's wrong with that is you're just hearing the same shit over and over again. It's whatever your angers, fears, reservations are, they're just going to get amplified more and more and more by hearing the same thing, if not worse. And that has really hurt a lot of relationships, because now people don't really want to listen, to understand. They just want to hear, respond. Everyone is so reactive these days. People just can't agree to disagree. Now, I have friends that we hardly agree on much of anything, whether it be the economy, politics, religion, whatever. We don't agree at all. And yet we find common ground to discuss, to tell each other how and why we feel about things. And you know what? I typically will walk away from those conversations with a new perspective. I may not agree with it, but at least I'll understand where it is that they're coming from. But what I don't do is shut them down. What I don't do is just say, no, you're full of shit. Shut up. You're this, you're that. I don't do that. And unfortunately, that circle of friends that I have is getting smaller and smaller by the day. I mentioned something on social media talking about Charlie Kirk, and I got to be honest, I barely even knew who he was until after he was shot. And I watched some of his stuff, and I really admired the way that he debated. Did I agree with everything he said? No, I don't agree with 100% of what almost everyone says. But I expressed this sadness that such a bright young man die in the way that he did. And the hate that I got out of that, I wasn't pro Charlie Kirk, wasn't against Charlie Kirk. I was just expressing how bad it was to see someone like that die. I would say that about anyone that died. Didn't have to be him. But the amount of hate that I got as soon as I mentioned his name, most of the people who was watching that, as soon as I said Charlie Kirk, they blocked me, unfollowed me, shit talked me, sent me bad messages, but none of that bothers me. None of it does. And when you get opposing opinions, or when you get hate from people, you shouldn't let it bother you, because when you're trying to express your point, or you're trying to learn something, and you're wanting to expand your world, most of the haters are going to be people that are just going to be very closed-minded. They're going to hear one or two things. That's all they're going to hear. And then at that point, they're going to be judge, jury, and executioner. And you have to ask yourself, do you really want to be around those kind of people? Do you really want that to shape your worldview, just being around those kind of people? I know I don't. I know that I don't want to be with people that do that. I talk about alcoholics, and I get a lot of haters because of the things that I say. And I'm only speaking from experience. No, I was not an alcoholic, but my dad was. And I lived in a pretty rough household growing up. I had things happen to me and saw things happen that they would probably put somebody in jail for now. But, that was back in the 70s. It was just kind of a normal thing. But it's funny to me how, as bad as it was for me, when I started talking about it just this year, how much worse it had actually gotten. And this is all coming from comments, messages, from talking to people one-on-one via Zoom, of how much worse it is. Until I started talking about it, I would have thought that things would have gotten better, which tells me that the kinder, gentler world that's being promoted on social media, all the stuff that people are saying about this and that, the political correctness, the kindness, the compassion. Well, I think that really only exists in social media. I think outside of the screen, inside of people's homes, it's worse than ever. I never would have thought that until I started having these conversations. If you would have just told me a year ago that the violence is worse, the abuse is worse, I probably wouldn't have believed it just from the stuff on social media that I've seen. And so, what I have learned from having these conversations with so many people is that what I see on social media, I'm really starting to believe less and less because there are so many people that are talking, they're showboating, they're full of shit. They're saying all these things about their lifestyle, about the things that they do, the things that they believe, and then I find out later that none of it's true. There's this website that I really like a lot called Baller Busters, and it's really exposing a lot of these guys. I don't know who they are. I think it's a couple of attorneys, but what it is that they talk about is just hilarious. But it's also sad because there are so many impressionable people out there who actually believe in the get rich quick, the instant gratification. And I'm sorry, it's not there. I live in a neighborhood full of Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys. I don't drive one. I don't have one. And there's so many of these people that look like the people that are on Baller Busters. And the Lamborghini dealership is just a mile from here at my office. I'm friends with one of the salespeople, and he tells me all the time that a lot of these people will come in there and either finance a Lambo or rent one, and then it comes back a couple of months later because they're all show and no go. They couldn't make the payments on it. So don't take everything you see on social media as the gospel because it's just not true. It's just not true. And it's been quite a wake up call for me. And that's really all I got to say. Peace.